Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for your time today for joining us at the MENA Information Security Conference's panel session, where we'll be covering Zero Trust today with our esteemed guests coming from Vectra, Infoblox, and Crowdstrike. It's going to be an exciting panel session, mainly because of the topic we're covering, but also we're bringing you some of the most senior top security cybersecurity engineers in the industry to come and have an informal panel session where we're going to talk frankly about one of the hottest topics right now that's going on. And that hot topic is really about zero trust. And today's topic, zero trust, the title of it goes beyond just zero trust. It talks about people, identity, devices, networks, data, cloud workloads, and then the automation and the orchestration of zero trust. So zero trust is just not one component or stovepipe. It stretches abroad across wide range of different cybersecurity architectures and different solutions combined together to provide a holistic zero trust. And so where did zero trust come from and why this methodology, or some even are calling it now a framework or a philosophy, an architecture, a strategy? Why is it so hot now, and why is it so key for so many customers to be able to be employing it, whether it's in the government or private sector? Well, if we take a step back and we look at how we used to do cybersecurity, a little history. We used to build castles, fortresses with large walls around that. And the castle was pretty impenetrable from the outside. But as soon as you bypass that wall or that castle fortress exterior, which we call in the cybersecurity world the perimeter, which is typically like firewalls, you had almost a complete access to the inside of the network. So that caused a lot of problems. Why? Well, we had a mobile revolution. And with 5G now encompassing the world and starting to be adopted tremendously, Gartner said even by this year, we'd have 25 billion devices in the Internet of Things. So the mobile revolution changed the way we do business, changed the way we do information technology and sharing of the data. Well, then there was the cloud evolution. Suddenly we were putting our data into data centers in the cloud. So what happened to data? Data became ubiquitous. It was everywhere, which made it so much harder for us as cybersecurity professionals and executives to manage and control the security of that data. So, today with our panels, we'll be talking about zero trust and how we revolutionize cybersecurity. Now, zero trust, has taken on a tremendous momentum in the last 2 years, but especially in the last few months. In fact, there's now a new executive order that's come out from the United States president where it specifically mentions zero trust networks 10 different times. And it even required that all federal agencies employ and start to deploy zero trust architectures, to also develop a plan around zero trust architectures, to deploy technology that has a zero trust architecture embedded in it. So right now, agencies, whether they're government or private, are required to look at zero trust. So today we're going to be talking about that. So if we were to define zero trust, there's going to be many definitions coming from different companies because there's different layers, as we mentioned. There's the devices, the people, the cloud workload. It's the endpoints. It's all over the place. So really, zero trust architecture means a security model or a design set of principles that are coordinated together in an ecosystem that provides a management strategy for us to be able to control and manage and secure our data. Whether that means if we look at the data directly, do we have least privilege model employed? Do we have, sensitive files identified? Do we have a lockdown on where and how the data is accessed? If we look at devices, are we protecting the endpoints? How are we protecting the endpoints? If we're looking at cloud workload, where's our zero trust in the cloud? If we're looking at networks and segmenting networks and bringing intelligence to networks and proper access control to networks, those all are encompassed in our discussion today, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So let me pull up our real quick. Let's do an introduction. So today we have, like I said, three fantastic companies in cybersecurity coming to you today from CrowdStrike, Infoblox, and Vectra. And I'm going to let each, engineer introduce themselves. So from CrowdStrike, we have Roland Daccache. We have from Vectra, Rabih Itani, and we also have from Infoblox, Mohammad Tenbakji. So why don't you go ahead, Roland? You want to start off and introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. Thank you, Samir, for the great intro. My name is Roland Daccache. I'm the SE manager for CrowdStrike, and I've been in the endpoint security and security intelligence industry for around 12 years. So I'm happy to be part of this panel today. Thank you.
Thank you. We are happy to have you and your experience to us today. Mohammed, you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Samir, for the great introduction as well. Mohammad Tenbakji, I'm the senior lead technical pre-sales architect covering KSA. I've been with Infoblox for the past 5 years, and hopefully more to come. And I will be more to be part of this great panel.
Fantastic, fantastic. We're happy to have you. And Rabih, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Samir, and thank you for putting this panel discussion into the right context. I like the introduction. So my name is Rabih Itani. I'm the country manager for Vectra here in United Arab Emirates. We at Vectra help organizations detect threats before they become breaches and optimize the SOC operation, all using AI technology. So this is in brief myself and Vectra.
Wow, fantastic. This is going to be exciting talk. We've got AI, we got CrowdStrike, we got Infoblox, we've got all our bases covered. So why don't I start off a question with you, Rabih, since you were the last to introduce yourself. What is the Vectra strategy to achieve zero trust architecture for your customers and environments?
Yeah, Samir. So you started it in the right way, and I'm going to start the same way. So the digital transformation has played a major role, and that we've seen in the last 6 to 7 years has played a major role in pushing employees outside the office space, right? And they started to work everywhere. Now there are two factors that accelerated that move and that phenomenon. One is that the 5G connectivity helped the workers work everywhere, right? And unfortunately, also the latest pandemic has had its factor in right into that and accelerated that move. Now, when this happened, the parameter of organizations has vanished. And architects had to move to a zero trust architecture rather than building that wall around the organization. And with the zero trust architecture, we look at it at a very high level. It's made of 3 pillars. One, you need to protect the end users themselves as they roam around, right? And then you need to harden access to the data center and cloud. But the third pillar is now becoming extremely important, is to monitor everything everywhere. And when I say everything, I say users, devices, servers, workloads, IoT, everything. And when I say everywhere, I say on-prem, Office 365 environments, IaaS environments, everywhere, all the attack surface. Now, why that become extremely important to have that vigilance into that area and monitor everything is because the protection layers are being bypassed by determined attackers. And once that's done, attackers are finding themselves roaming almost freely in what we call the security gap inside organizations after the protection layers are bypassed. And after that, they start to execute what we call the kill chain. So we at Vectra bring AI in to help us detect those malicious insiders inside now executing behavioral kill chains, and we look at their behaviors inside that network, and then we help the SOC team detect those threats and those kill chains before they become breaches, and accelerate the time to remediation as well. So this is our strategy.
That's fantastic. That's very helpful. Let me go to you, Roland, and ask the same question. How does Crowdstrike Strategy to achieve zero trust architecture for their customers achieved?
Thank you, Samir, and thank you, Rabih, for your answer as well. So first things first, I think that we try to simplify the concept of zero trust, because if you ask 10 people on the street, what do you understand by zero trust? You probably hear 10 different answers. The same thing happened to ML, to big data. So we try to simplify the concept, and we focus on what we call like the three main concepts behind it are visibility, threat detection, and then enforcement. So in a nutshell, first of all, to protect yourself and to adopt a zero trust architecture, you need to understand your digital footprint, your presence, your attack surface. So you need to have visibility, as Rabih mentioned, into every asset: cloud workloads, remote users, mobile applications, endpoints, and I would add to that as well, identity stores. We see a lot of compromises based on Active Directory being overbloated, very weakly maintained, forgotten users, users with excessive privileges. So this is the visibility part. Once visibility is established, we move into detection. So we want to focus on anomalous behaviors. And while, for example, a solution like Vectra may look at it from a network angle or from a cloud angle, we look at it at Crowdstrike from an identity and at an endpoint angle. Without really relying on error-prone log files, we monitor the actual processes on the endpoint, the actual communications. And finally, enforcement. Once you've established visibility and detection, you want to enforce a zero trust architecture. What I mean by that, integrate with domain controllers, integrate with multi-factor authentication, integrate with SaaS identity providers, Okta and others, apply risk-based policies to block, allow, audit access requests in as frictionless manner as possible, because you don't want to introduce complexity while adopting zero trust. You want to make the adoption easier, and that's how we try to do it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. That was excellent. Wow, both of you. Thank you. That really shed some light. You know, part of the theme of the conference is cyber vigilance, and the sub-theme is continuous monitoring and mitigation, which are really key components. Let's go to Mohammad. Mohammad, how does Infoblox strategy to achieve zero trust architecture for their customers accomplish?
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank you, Samir, for giving me the opportunity to share with you and with the audience what is Infoblox strategy towards, the zero trust transformation model. But actually, before that, like one step backwards, why how Infoblox can help in this. So basically, zero architecture, network architecture, any need for a so you have a couple of locations. So each of these locations is considered a boundary. So each boundary would inherit by default, a default predefined trust model. that would naturally be inherited by the devices and the users belonging to this boundary. So this model has many limitations and key limitations, right? First of all, the scalability. It cannot scale and accommodate the enormous growth that is happening across the network perimeter as the network the edge level, especially driven by the work from home or IoTs. So information is also privileged expectations from hackers today can compromise the device that debates other devices the same boundary. So needs to develop a new blueprint need to evolve. And that's what was found to help architects to better architect secure networks, more reliable networks that are agile, flexible enough to keep up, with this expansion. So to do so zero trust to eliminate the concept of boundary-based trust model and replaces that with something called a policy evaluation methodology. Properties are being assessed predefined points possible to a set of users belonging to a certain site. So to do so, you would need to maintain controls. One of identical because you know who are users, right? What kind of devices do these users operate and use, and services are made by users. And with Infoblox, a specialized area or market space called DDI or DNS, DCP, and IP address management, where we are able to course of DNS, DCP, DNS, that are really that the trust. Also, integrating those crucial information at the DDI level with DNS security would also play a role in influencing the security policies, the access rule policies, to the edge by the use of our hybrid DNS solution, which would play an essential role in this area. And this would make a lot of sense. Why? Because DNS is common ground and it is a denominator. Whether the user is trying to access a website, a cloud application, send an email, doesn't matter. Whether the user is located at home, working from home, located at the head office, it will all start with DNS, and it will make a lot of work to employ security intelligence on the control level, which is DDI.
Wonderful. Wow. Wow. That's fantastic. Thank you, Mohammad. You came in a little bit choppy there, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what you talked about and reiterate it because you hit on some really good points there. A policy-based approach is almost necessary, and part of the title of this panel session was around orchestration and visibility, which Infoblox gives. And another point that you brought up that was a key point was about DNS. There is a lot of data exfiltration now happening with DNS. And so Infoblox's capability to monitor the traffic and give you network insight into DNS is going to be pivotal going forward in the future. And also, data leaving the data center, the egress, we a lot of times we monitor our infrastructure with firewalls and we have rules protecting what comes in. But the real question is what's going out? right? So fantastic input there on your capabilities to meet zero trust. So fantastic. Let's go on to the second question, and this question will go to Roland. We'll start off with you, Roland, first. How do you believe identity and endpoint contribute as main pillars for zero trust architecture?
Yes, thank you, Samir. So if you look at the pillars of zero trust, there are many. So you could look at it from a network angle, from an identity angle, from an application angle, from an endpoint angle. At CrowdStrike, we do what we do best. We focus on the endpoint and the identity. We traditionally focused on endpoint. However, we know that almost everything today revolves around identity. People are consuming cloud SaaS applications like never before. And it's very difficult to secure them from an endpoint angle. You look at Dropbox, Box, even SharePoint and Teams and Zoom and all these tools, without a clear view of identity store activities, customers can't really fulfill the goals of zero trust approach from one angle alone. That's why we added identity on top of endpoint. If we look a little bit at the threat landscape resulting from the lack of adoption of zero trust, it's basically things like lateral movement, like credential reuse, credential stuffing, malicious use of SMB, malicious use of file shares, malicious use of CIFS and other protocols. A reason being, the main reason of the success of these types of attacks is that, as you mentioned in the beginning, people focus on safeguarding the perimeter, but they forget to monitor what's happening inside. That's why at CrowdStrike, we focus on the core, which is, first of all, according to us, it's the endpoint, a VM, a cloud workload, a desktop, etc., combined with monitoring of identity stores such as Active Directory, Ping Federate, others. The goal is to deliver a zero trust approach that is practical to use and that is actually efficient at detecting and stopping sophisticated attacks that may emerge from a phishing email, end up with compromised credentials, ransomware, data extortion. That's why we have selected these two pillars among few others to focus on and offer our zero trust approach to our clients.
Wow, you hit on some critical points, especially with the latest news going on with the Colonial Gas Pipeline Authority out in the United States that got hit by ransomware. I mean, my kids couldn't get gasoline who live in Virginia for 2 days. So you're hitting on the root cause of some of the most dangerous areas that we need covered in the cybersecurity architecture world, or in the information technology world, or in the OT world. So that's very good insight. Thank you very much. Let me go to Rabih. Rabih, how can Vectra help organizations be more vigilant in monitoring the attack surface?
So let me go to what Vectra does. Vectra is a behavioral-based network detection and response platform. Okay, so it's network-based and for network detection and response. So it's an NDR. It falls into the NDR market, where we focus on monitoring what's happening on the network itself. Right. So, and with Vectra, we bring three main values. One is that we detect based on behaviors. And that's a major shift from monitoring based on signatures. Because signatures, they change by the minute with the new tools, with the new attackers. Signatures are being catered anyway by the protection layers. So protection layers, they use signature-based detections. And signatures mandate some decryption to be done. While we want to avoid that, we don't want to decrypt. We want to keep the privacy intact. So we want to look at the behavioral of the attackers. The second thing is that we want to bring AI to our advantage, right? And with AI, we are able to help with the detection, because with AI, we are able to stitch multiple alerts over a long period of time, can be months, right? And stitch them into a single incident. And with AI, we are able also to prioritize what is risky and what is not, what's more risky than others. And that we do that also with based on AI models as well. It's not just accumulation of incidents. And the third thing is that we complement the visibility of the SOC and what Gartner coined as the SOC visibility triad by being a pillar in that SOC, one of the three pillars of that SOC. And so that SOC is based on the SIM UBA, is based on the EDR, like our ecosystem partner here, Crowdstrike. And the third pillar is the NDR, was Vectra. And with these three pillars, SIM UBA, EDR, and NDR, the visibility of the threats is fulfilled. You get the full visibility of that threat. So we are part of that validated referenced architecture that must be today applied in each and every modern SOC. So behavioral, AI, and visibility into the SOC. This is how we help organizations.
Wow. Wow. I'm a big personal fan of behavior analysis. I think that is a key way to differentiate on how to really monitor your infrastructure. Behavior analysis gives you a completely different horizon, visibility into what's going on versus a signature based, as you said. And you said something very critical. You know, one of my talks in the early morning when the welcome speech was around SOAR. You know, the ability to have orchestration and automation and response within a SOC. I think that's going to be really key in the future. You know, companies like Vectra, CrowdStrike, and Infoblox working together in an ecosystem, like you said, is going to be pivotal. It is the future. And I'm really happy to see that you guys are working together and thinking about that out of the box, thinking of it's an ecosystem. We've got to learn to work better. We've got to put the glue together on all these solutions. So let's go over to Mohammad. Let me pull up your question. So Mohammad, it's your turn, my friend. How can Infoblox help organizations be more vigilant in adopting zero trust network access ZTNA frameworks?
Sure. So let me take the discussion, Samir, more from a security perspective. Basically, the zero trust security framework to highlight like 5 key areas as the main drivers to this journey of adopting zero trust. So the first one is visibility. The second is basically segmentation, API integration, whether can play a role in helping security, network security, in across 3 areas mainly. So the first area is visibility, and as you know, visibility is the key. You cannot basically secure what you can see. And I have mentioned briefly, when answering the first question, that Infoblox do maintain, core visibility data from identities and from the DDI layer, accompanied with DNS security and DNS firewalling information. These are considered very crucial information that can be exchanged. We do allow to exchange this information across a variety of things, which is outbound or the ecosystem integration with vulnerability systems generation was. So we have to empower, this journey. Also, we do what our firewalling analysis technique is, we do use heuristic techniques, machine learning techniques, and AI, to discover zero-day attacks from DNS angles and be able to reflect those in terms of actions at the DNS level and at other third-party systems. So these are the key areas where Infoblox would play a role, okay, in helping network architects by following and embracing the framework security.
Fantastic, fantastic. Again, when you're talking about, security operations centers and your interoperability, I think you mentioned 50 different, out of the box interoperability components working together. That is going to be key to the word, what you said, which I was a buzzword for me now, with the complexity of cybersecurity, which is automation, working with SIMs, right? As CrowdStrike, Vectra, and Infoblox works very closely with SIMs. In fact, the other day, Roland, I was looking on the web and I saw you guys had a really cool playbook with Splunk. And I was like, this is great. SOAR's coming into effect. So, thank you, Mohammad. That was a great answer. Let's go to our third question, and we will go to Roland again. We'll start off with Roland. Roland, what is your advice for enterprises in order to embark on the journey of building resilient zero trust models from a holistic view?
Thank you, Samir. I was actually, while preparing for this panel, reading online, and I found a very interesting stat. And it says that 82% of enterprises acknowledge that they want to adopt a zero trust architecture in their environment. However, less than 32% have actually initiated the journey. I think part of the problem stems from the fact that at first glance, it looks complex. So where do I start? How do I cover this project? From which angle should I start? And if we just keep on listening to many solutions, many vendors, etc., it gets confusing if we are sitting in the seat of an end user. From a high-level perspective, I would advise customers to start simple, define their goals. So how mature are you at the moment, and what is the maturity level you want to achieve from a zero trust perspective? Let's assume you're starting from scratch. Start by defining your attack surface, defining your digital footprint, your assets, your users. Extend beyond the data center. Usually your digital footprint is mobile apps, websites, mobile applications, remote endpoints, cloud workloads, SaaS applications. Define them, consolidate the access requirement based on a per user basis. Apply the concept of least privilege. So which user needs access to what resource? And then you start looking at the right technologies to segment. So zero trust can be looked at from a firewalling perspective. How do I segment or micro segment my network? Then monitor. So what tools do I need to deploy? Rabih mentioned, for example, the triad of Gartner, which is an NDR, an EDR, and a SIM/SOAR. So this is covering the monitoring and enforcing. This is where SOAR comes in the picture. So the SOAR playbooks actually allow me to enforce access policies based on zero trust concepts. So it's a project, it's a beautiful project to embark on, but I think it's a must. So we cannot ignore the fact that we need to adopt a zero trust architecture. And from CrowdStrike point of view, the way we help customers embark on their journey is that we try to simplify it, consolidate it. So across our analytics platform, we help them uncover the attack surface, and we help them build the architectures, starting from endpoints to workloads to identity, of course, while partnering with other solutions to provide this holistic zero trust architecture. And of course, we're very happy to have zero trust conversations with enterprises and clients who want to know more about our approach. Thanks.
Wow, that was fantastic. I agree. I think complexity is a big challenge. And, something I always heard some of my top executives that I worked for in the past used to say is managing complexity is a very difficult and sometimes losing strategy. So simplifying things and, taking it by a step-by-step approach, as you mentioned, and connecting the dots all together to come out with a complete picture in regards to risk management. And I think a lot of enterprises, whether they know it or not, have already embarked on zero trust, whether it's data loss prevention, least privilege model. These are all things that they've already embarked on that they can look at. So why don't I go to Mohammad? And Mohammad, let me ask you the question, what is your advice for enterprises in order to embark on the journey to building resilient zero trust models from a holistic view?
So, Samir, basically, I would say it's simple. Just begin with understanding, the environment, future, and identifying also your attack surface. So you can do so by beginning with, identifying a couple of questions like who are your users, where are they located, what kind of services do they use, why are they using it in this way, okay? And then by identifying the conditions or the criteria, okay, of how these users are supposed to access, their and then to identify security perspective, network perspective that are needed to empower, this change. Of course, keep in mind, digital transformation, extend or your business online technology supporting, your operation and your business.
The ability to ask the right question and query within your own staff and within your own organization of what is critical. Part of risk management is we can't protect everything. So beginning off with those questions, I think is a great idea. Mohammed, let's turn it over to you. What is your advice for enterprises in order to embark on the journey of building resilient zero trust models from a holistic view?
I think you meant Rabih, right?
I'm sorry, I meant Rabih.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
My advice really is to start with realizing that they first realize that the parameter has vanished. This is number one. And I was happy to hear Roland bringing up the statistics that 80% of organizations have the plans to go to zero trust. They are convinced, and I appreciate the methodology offered of simplification into accelerating that adoption. Really. So the second thing you need to do is to acknowledge that protection layers are not enough, and you have to assume. You have to work with this assumption. You have to assume that attackers are already inside their organizations and build your strategy accordingly. Do not wait for them and then start building. Assume they are in and build your strategy accordingly. Third thing, bring the help of AI. It's there. The computing power we have in today in the cloud, and the devices and the appliances and hardware is enabling us to harness the power of AI. So let's harness the power of AI to detect those sophisticated threats and sophisticated kill chains over extremely long periods of time that humans alone cannot do. And let's bring the help of AI to prioritize the risks that we have inside organizations. The fourth thing and the fourth advice is to cover the entire attack surface. Do not miss the Office 365 environment. Do not miss your Azure AD. It's not only about devices. It's not only about PCs. It's about identities as well, right? So it's about IoT as well. It's about OT as well, right? So do not miss anything of your attack surface. The attackers don't work in silos. They go over on-prem, data center, cloud, backed. So the kill chain will cover the entire attack surface. As the fourth thing, make sure that, the fifth thing, actually, the fifth advice, make sure that you modernize your SOC. Okay? Make sure that you are bringing a validated reference architecture with this sensor, with EDR, and with NDR. So these are the five advices I have.
Wow. Well, thank you, Rabih. It's almost like we left the best for last. So, no, that was fantastic. All of you, thank you so much. You've given us great insight today and taking on this journey of zero trust that's almost now become mandatory and paramount in order to successfully be able to meet today's challenges and tomorrow's challenges. And I appreciate your time and I appreciate all the efforts your companies and you as individuals have done to provide this content to our delegates at the BINA ISEC conference. And I wish you guys all the best of luck and hopefully we'll grab coffee soon. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Roland. Thank you, Mohammad.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Andrea.
great day. All right, Andrea, I think you can